up, Only Playbook fans? We are back for another episode 74. We are previewing week 4. Thursday Night Football has already happened last night. We'll recap that. No Shishode again. Too busy doing doctor things. So it's me and Shovit. Shovit, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good, man. We back and we're ready to give you guys the preview that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to run through all the games, talk about, pickups that you need to look into prior to Sunday and any other fantasy/injury implications. Without further ado, Shovit, let's jump right into water cooler talk. Thursday Night Football kicked off last night. It was an ugly game. I think the first thing that needs to be mentioned is if anybody watched, you're probably thinking about Tua Tagovailoa with that really, really scary injury that he suffered. A lot of questions of, following the NFL Twitter all day. There's a lot of people that want answers on, the turnaround of Tua getting hurt last week. Everybody that watched thinking it was a concussion because he got up and stumbled and it was very, very visually apparent. But, if you're not a doctor and if you're not in the medical field, that may not mean everything. So it's easy for us to assume that that's what it was. But the medical doctors and everybody determined that it was just a neck injury and that he passed concussion protocol. So I don't know. It was just a really, really scary sight, I think, for everybody watching the game last night. I'd never seen anybody experience anything like that, seeing just the amount of replays that they showed on Amazon Prime with his fingers like that. I'm like, dude, we get it, man. We get it. And I don't know, maybe some people aren't as sensitive to it, but a couple of times seems more than enough. But I don't know what your thoughts are there, but I was very I fell for him big time. And you could see the teammates, the other team, the stadium, right? I mean, the air kind of got sucked out of the game there for a while, but pushing all that aside, the good news is we got reports that he had, all of movement in his extremities. Today, he tweeted out that everything is good. He's doing better. So happy to hear that. But I know that was kind of a scary sight to see for anybody watching the game.
100%, man. That just those fingers, man. I didn't even know that having a head injury, that it's all connected through your spines and you could have an impact on your fingers. That is so scary, but glad to hear that he's doing well. He flew back with the team. So good signs there, but like you said, a lot of questions, who's to be blamed for this. And they've got team doctors and then they've got these other doctors that are not associated with the team. And at the end of the day, it's the team doctors that decide, right? Whether or not they're to give the clearance. And I don't know what the ruling from this third party medical team was, but they thought they're still going with that. It's a back issue. It's not related to last week's injury. But a lot of questions, and I think it's still going to unfold itself, and we'll find out more throughout this week.
Yeah, I mean, I read a tweet that said when he got hurt last week, and you saw that stumbling, he was back on the field in real time 8 minutes after that, right? So it was 8 real time minutes that after he had suffered that, he was back on the field. So I mean, that just kind of blows my mind. And I don't know if it's more so this year, Shovit, but I felt like the NFL's concussion protocol seemed way more conservative in years past. That if you suffered a concussion one week, I can't think of a time that a guy passed concussion protocol that quickly, or even to play the week after. Most times what I saw was they didn't clear concussion protocol and they were going to sit a week. So I'd never seen that quick of a turnaround for somebody who deemed to have a concussion, especially when we saw it last week. I thought for sure he was out for the game. So him returning that game was already crazy, but turn around and play on a short week on Thursday night and then suffer something similar. It's just not good for Tua, his family, for the sport, for the team, just for his future. Right. So, let's hope everything went according to plan. And this just happened to be a coincidence that this transpired and that everything is good for him, but hoping long-term that there's nothing serious for Tua, because he has been balling out and I want to see more of him on the field to continue to prove me wrong, because I was such a big Tua doubter personally. So, glad to hear that that's okay. The story of the game was the Bengals at home took care of business, 27-15 final. Bengals were favored by 3.5, under 49 cash. I think the name of the game, this game, was a couple of wide receivers on both sides stood out, right? Tyreek, your boy, 10 catches, 160 yards.
Mr. Cheetah.
Dude, every time he touches the ball, you think he's gone, right? Just the way he moves, the way he jukes people. It's just so fun to see the ball in his hands. 10 for 160. And then T. Higgins on the other side with a great game, 7 for 124, found the end zone on that bomb where he beat Xavier Howard, who was dealing with that glute groin injury. So he gets a little bit of a pass because I know he was dealing with that. But still, bro, you got burned. T. Higgins showing out. Neither team really ran the ball effectively. I think that was one thing I noticed. I mean, Joe Mixon, man, he's such a like unexciting fantasy player. 24 carries for somebody that, just basically running into his offensive lineman every single play, only garnered like 76 or 67 yards. Did find the end zone. That touchdown
Yeah.
run was impressive, where he got stopped and then like the entire O-line pushed him in. So that was, nonetheless, he still was productive for fantasy owners, and he's still getting the volume to justify starting him, but it's not pretty. And then on the other side, I think it's really, really important to talk about Raheem Mostert. 72% of the time he was on the field. They tried to get Edmonds involved, like that first drive, that touchdown pass to him where he just straight up dropped it. I don't know if that dictated how they featured him the rest of the game, but clearly they have goal line packages or they have plays designed for Edmonds, so they like to utilize his passing game. But Mostert's been a great runner, and Mostert's been more than capable as a pass catcher. So I don't know if this really dwindles Edmonds' fantasy value, but he's not a guy you're probably comfortable starting. I think his fantasy relevance has just become because he got into the end zone the last couple of weeks to make his slash line look somewhat respectable. But I think if Mostert's still on free agency, which he shouldn't be, but if he's on your bench, you're probably leaning more towards this guy looking to probably deploy him in your lineup for weeks to come. So that's exciting for Mostert owners, but not exciting for Edmonds owners. But again, the story of the game, Bengals protected the football, right? We talk about Cincinnati's Achilles heel, protect the football, protect Joe Burrow. And if you win the turnover differential or the turnover battle, you're probably going to win the game. And that's what they did. They won the turnover battle. They protected the football. Joe Burrow was protected. And they, moved on to victory, and now they're 2-2. And I think the Bengals or the Dolphins were the second to last team that was undefeated in the NFL. So now there's only one team left that's undefeated. Good for the Bengals, because I know they have a really tough division there. And for the Dolphins, I'm not really worried about them, more so just focused on Tua getting back on the field, because, as great as Teddy is in kind of the role that he fits, he still doesn't show the upside that Tua kind of showcases here early in the season. So nonetheless, Bengals take care of that one, 27-15. You have anything to add in that game?
Yeah. So one last thing to add, we talked about Mixon. Mixon is having a historically poor I guess stats as far as any running back is concerned. With the amount of attempts that he has and the yardage, total yards that he has, no other running back has had lower rushing yards with that many attempts before from week 1 to week 3. So it might be the offensive line, but he also doesn't have that explosiveness that where he breaks away and when you hand it off, and he doesn't have the explosiveness to like run away with it. So I think he's a 29-year-old back, and I think father time is getting closer, and we may see more Chris Evans or P. Ryan in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the play on third down where they put Chris Evans in the slot and they ran that like wheel route and threw him a bomb, and it was overthrown. But still, It was just interesting because we talked about it in our group chat. You got guys like Higgins, Chase, and Boyd, and you're throwing a wheel route on third down to Evans. But you had mentioned there's something about Bengals fans loving Chris Evans. So this guy probably has flashed things in practice to warrant getting plays ran for him. So I guess, if we can see more consistency or see something that he can be productive, it makes sense. But man, when you have the weapons that you already have, is there really reason to run plays for the backup running back? I don't know. But it is what it is. Nonetheless, they came away victorious and they moved to 2-2. Dolphins dropped to 3-1. But primetime games have been kind of Dudley, if you will, for the last 3 weeks. So this one kind of fit the bill to be a little bit Dudley, based on the fact that we expected this matchup to be a little bit more high flying. Couple of other news to real quickly note. We talked about the Pro Bowl last week, where the Pro Bowl is gone and they're going to have skills competition. The thing about the Pro Bowl and why it's lost its lust is anybody that got selected, if they just didn't want to participate, they could just be like, I'm not going to go. And so they just find anybody, like the next best guy. And there was a year, again, where Trubisky and Teddy Bridgewater were the Pro Bowl quarterbacks. And I'm like, dude, the Pro Bowl has kind of lost all of its flame once, that year transpired. But they put out a rule that if you're selected to one of these Pro Bowl skill games, you're required to attend, barring some sort of a medical issue. Now, I imagine there's still gray area there where, you can probably say, oh, I'm sore, or, oh, I'm dealing with something, and not show up. But the fact that they're putting out rules means they want this to garner more viewership for like better players to play, right? Like we want to see the guys that deserve to be there and play. Obviously, unless you're in the Super Bowl or something and you want to skip it, that's totally different. But, we're not watching these skills competitions for the Trubiskys and the Bridgewaters, man. We're watching it for like the Mahomes, the Bradys, the Rodgers, those guys. And there's only two quarterbacks or two teams that can be in the Super Bowl. So everybody else that gets selected, we want to see them there. I want to see like the best receivers go up against each other in some of these competitions. I think that would make it so much more fun, and a lot of people would watch versus kind of what the Pro Bowl had become the last couple of years. So I think that's an interesting wrinkle that they put into that rule. So we'll see if, again, players still find loopholes to, create injury designations to not play, or if people actually take it to mean, hey, this is just an opportunity for us to all hang out, have fun, and put on a show, because that's really kind of what I want to see. Hurricane Ian has come and gone. Obviously, to those that were affected, hoping everything is good. I know there were still parts of the area that were severely impacted, but from a football perspective, it looks like the worst is over, and Tampa Bay is going to play that Sunday night football game at home against the Chiefs as expected, and is going to be a home game played on time. So no playing in Minnesota at the Viking Stadium or anything like that. They are going to play at home. Let's jump into a couple of waiver and free agent additions that you may be looking at heading into week 4. Khalil Herbert, running back for the Bears, looks like he's going to get the start. Montgomery's officially listed as out. He's probably one of the top guys from waiver pickups that were picked up this week. If for some wild reason somebody didn't put a waiver claim on him, he is definitely a guy that needs to get picked up, even if it's just not for the fact that it's this week. He has shown that he looks a lot better than Montgomery does in that offense. And so there could be a future where Khalil Herbert becomes the starter, or at least starts to take away more of the role from Montgomery. He's got the explosiveness. He can catch passes. He can run. I think the biggest thing is Montgomery's a great pass blocker. So I think that's the only last piece of Khalil Herbert's game that's going to give him like the full RB1 on that team. But that's somebody that you need to look out for. Vikings running back Alexander Mattison. It looks like Dalvin Cook's going to play with that shoulder sling, but as Vikings fans, as fans of the NFL, we know that Dalvin Cook is good for at least 2 to 4 games missed a year. So Madison is a great handcuff or a stash on your bench for those weeks to deploy, because, the Vikings will still run the ball a good amount. Receivers, Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs, also probably a popular waiver wire pickup. He does look like he is going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Packers, at least for the time being. 7 catches, 80-some yards, and a touchdown last week. And so any wide receiver that's a wide receiver 1 for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, you probably want on your team. So if he's still out there, definitely go scoop him up. I know the Bengals played last night, but a guy I had listed on here was Tyler Boyd after, I guess the cohesion that he already has with Burrow. The fact that whenever defenses are playing those 2 highs, he's kind of the underneath guy. That's at least what I interpreted to happen last night, and it didn't really happen. So I don't know if he's a guy that you're really worth rostering at this point, knowing that you have Higgins and Chase there. And they seem to like to get Joe Mixon the ball on catches, Evans on catches, even Hayden Hurst. So there are a lot of mouths to feed outside of the big 2 that they are going to feature pretty much week in and week out. So I don't necessarily think Boyd's somebody that you want to keep on your bench, but if you get desperate, he is there in an offense that loves to throw the football.
Yeah, deeper leagues, yeah, that definitely you want to throw it. You could add Tyler Boyd into the mix, and he also threw a pass last game.
And you know what's funny about that? When I was watching that, Kirk Herbstreit said Tyler Boyd was a great quarterback in high school or something like that, right? And then I saw a tweet today from a guy who literally covers the high school he went to, and he's like, I can confirm Tyler Boyd never played quarterback in high school. So I was like, I don't really know if Kirk Herbstreit's just pulling shit out of his ass, but it's a big change. One thing I noticed, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but he's jumping from like covering college games to the NFL. And a lot of his analysis is like, oh, this guy's one of the best at what he does. But I feel like he's using his college brain to say this guy's the best at what he does. And it hasn't translated to this guy being the best at what he does in the NFL per se. So that's one thing I noticed early. I can't think of the player, but he mentioned a couple of players that are like, oh, this guy's one of the best tacklers in the league. And I'm like, is he though? Is he really? And so I don't know if he's just really drawing a lot of his college football experience to like commentate in the NFL.
Was
right
it
now.
Logan Wilson? Was he talking about Logan Wilson or someone else?
It wasn't, because if it was Logan Wilson, I think there's a legitimate case to be made because he's been so good, but I can't remember. But it's just one of those things where I think he's literally drawing a lot from his college experience to talk about the NFL. So let's see if Kirky Boyd can, start to get the NFL under his belt and really give us actual NFL analysis. But Tyler Boyd, and then we move on. Raiders wide receiver Mac Hollins surprisingly has garnered a lot of catches, a lot of targets, even with them having Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller. I don't know if it's deeper leagues that you're looking at him, because I still am remiss to believe that this guy's going to be a consistent fantasy producer for you with the different mouths and the better mouths to feed that are there. But if you're in deeper leagues, it's definitely garnering some stash probability to have Mac Hollins on your bench. Same thing with Bills wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie. We know Gabe Davis is the RB2 or wide receiver 2 there, but he's still hobbled. He's still dealing with that ankle injury there. And so Isaiah McKenzie got a lot of attention last week. He's a great slot guy. He's going to get a lot of underneath stuff. So if defenses are going to continue to play that too high shell against the Buffalo Bills and not let, the Davises and the Diggs beat them, Isaiah McKenzie seems to be a nice answer for Josh Allen in the slot as kind of a safety blanket. Cowboys wide receiver Michael Gallup officially off of the injury report, so he may make his debut this week. The sad part about that is it's Cooper Rush, so, take with that what you will. It is still nice to see that he is going to be back. He's probably going to slot right into the X receiver for them with CeeDee Lamb on the other side. What's his face? Noah Brown has been getting a lot of targets and catches, so if that means anything for kind of the future of Michael Gallup, he is definitely worth, at least having on your bench, watching a couple of weeks, and then whether Cooper Rush plays longer or Dak's actually progressing from his injury a lot faster than we expected, he could definitely be fantasy relevant towards the latter half of the season. Bucs wide receiver Russell Gage. I know the Bucs are dealing with a lot of injuries on their receiving core. As long as Evans, Godwin, Julio, those guys continue to remain injured, I think it's just apparent and imminent that Russell Gage is going to get targets. Tom Brady's going to need to throw the football somewhere, whether it's Cole Beasley, whether it's Gage. Gage definitely deserves a roster spot, at least present date, with the injury situation around the Bucs receiving core. Couple of tight ends. Browns tight end David Njoku has started off the season pretty nicely. It's hard to say with Jacoby Brissett and in a run-first offense how consistent he's going to be, but we talk about it all the time with the tight end position. Outside of like the cream of the crop, everything else is kind of a crapshoot anyway. So if you're not, holding the Kelseys, the Andrews, probably the Ertz, maybe the Pitts, those guys, your Wallers, you're probably looking at trying to funnel the best matchups on a week-to-week basis for tight end position. Njoku is definitely somebody to keep an eye on in terms of the passing game for Cleveland. Same thing with Jets tight end Tyler Conklin. He's kind of garnered a nice role for himself. The one kind of caveat to that is it was wild. Joe Flacco was quarterback, and now Zach Wilson's back. So we got to see who the camaraderie is going to build with Zach Wilson, whether it's going to be Conklin, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson's going to kind of maintain that steam and momentum that he's built up. So something to watch out for. But again, tight end is such a scarce position that if you're going to get a guy that's seeing some volume, that has the opportunity to find the end zone every so often, they deserve a roster spot. And then your boy, Jags tight end, Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram's another guy that has built some camaraderie with Trevor Lawrence. So he definitely deserves a stash spot on your roster. Any other waiver wire pickup, Shovit, that I did not mention?
No, I think you covered it all. I mean, this guy, Jamal Williams, probably not in waivers anymore, but he is going to get the start. Yeah, he shouldn't be, but he'll start over DeAndre Swift. So
yeah, that's definitely a guy that if he, if Swift, I think Swift's already designated to be out, right? I think Williams is a guy that you absolutely start, especially with Noah Monra as well. So, and I think DJ Chark is dealing with an injury, and Hawkinson's on the injury report. So there's a lot of weapons that are injured there. So you're probably deploying Jamal Williams with full confidence. That's it for Water Cooler Talk, Shovit. Let's jump into the rundown. Sunday morning kicks off with an early game in London at Tottenham Spurs Stadium. The Vikings are going to be there as the road team taking on the New Orleans Saints. Vikings are favored by 2.5, over under 43.5. Couple of injury notes on the Saints side. Jameis Winston looks like he's doubtful, probably not going to play. Michael Thomas is officially listed as out, so there is going to be Andy Dalton at the helm probably, and you're looking at guys like Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, maybe even Alvin Kamara getting a little bit more work with no Michael Thomas. On the other side, I'm obviously looking at how the Vikings are going to continue to maintain some momentum and get Justin Jefferson kind of his ship right, if you will. Last couple of weeks have been subpar for him, but he is drawing a lot of double, triple teams. That has spelled good news for KJ Osborne and Adam Thielen, but you like to believe that, a true number one of the best receivers in the league, you're still going to find ways to get him involved. But the Vikings offense looks like they should be in line to have a good game. I know the Saints defense is supposed to be good on paper. They're going to have Marshawn Lattimore, but so far what they're supposed to be versus how they've actually played has been a little bit, not really correlating. So I'm a little worried about the Saints defense, and I'm a little worried that the offense isn't going to get enough going. Could have some shorter fields for the Vikings, and that could garner some points given up. But outside of that, again, I personally, even as a Viking fan, no bias aside, I think the Vikings should win this football game. You're playing against a backup quarterback. You don't have pretty much your wide receiver one, and the defense has a lot of question marks. So I think the Vikings should be able to take care of business. Last time Kirkerton was in London, he threw for almost 500 yards. So that was with the Redskins at the time. So hopefully we can get a repeat performance for Kirk Cousins, and he can put on a show in London.
Nice. It's like the opposite of prime time. So Kirk just shines. And does,
yeah,
it's amazing.
It's super early in the morning, 9:30 a.m. Nobody's awake. Kirk's just throwing for 500 yards in 5 minutes.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think the Saints defense is not as good as they've been, but Marshawn Lattimore is the bright spot there. He has been average, like total yards, I think is like 50 to 60 yards for all the receivers that he's been covering. So if the Vikings were watching Thursday Night Football and saw what Joe Burrow did with T. Higgins, with Chase being double teamed, if they follow that same sort of, I guess, game script, then they should be all right. All right, next up, we've got the Cleveland Browns at Atlanta Falcons. This is going to be an interesting game. The Falcons have surprisingly a decent offense, and the Browns have a lot of injuries on defense. So Myles Garrett is hurt because of the car accident, and so is Jadeveon Clowney. So these guys are questionable. So a game that I think that the Browns can really just go out and win straight up, like, easy peasy kind of deal. I think it's going to be tough because of if Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett is out. One guy that needs to step up for the Browns in terms of the defense is Denzel Ward, the cornerback one. He gave up 8 receptions for 84 yards to Deontay Johnson. Falcons, they've got Cordell Patterson, they've got Drake London, they've got Kyle Pitts. These guys aren't short on offense, so they can definitely put up points. Now their defense is a whole nother ball game, and especially their run defense. I think that the Browns are going to run heavy. Nick Chubb is going to be there, and then with this kind of Amari Cooper being able to be successful, with Brissett being accurate and using him in play actions, the Browns certainly have a chance to win this game. But it's going to be an interesting game. It might be closer than we expect, but Falcons definitely have a chance to win this game if their offense can score points. But so it's even. I'm not sure which way to lean. I'm going to lean Browns just because of the Nick Chubb factor.
Yeah, I mean, if they can run the ball, establish the run, control the clock like they do, I think the Falcons aren't at their best when they're going to need to only pass, right? I mean, I think Cordero Patterson has been so good just running the football and then utilizing Drake London on the play actions, and then getting Mariota scrambling or out in space to find open receivers. If they have to be down and they're just strictly becoming like a pass first team, then I think they'll struggle, even with the weapons. I mean, it's Mariota, unfortunately. So, but I think if the game script dictates a lot of running on both sides and no team go out to big leads, then we could see a close score in the fourth quarter that could go either which way, hence the -1 line. But like you, if I have to take a lean, I'm leaning Browns -1 all day long. That takes us to Dallas for a divisional matchup. The Commanders are in town. Cowboys at home with a backup quarterback, favored by 3 points, over under 41.5. How much the Commanders have fallen after Carson Wentz's first 2 weeks, right? I mean, they're underdogs to a backup quarterback. I think the line more dictates the impressiveness of the Dallas defense, man. That pass rush is absolutely no joke. I fear for Carson Wentz's life. I mean, he's already so erratic. He's notorious for fumbling the football, throwing interceptions, just being very, what's the word? Just not safe with the football. He's very
erratic.
I can't think of erratic. Yeah, that's a good way. He's very erratic with the football. So I think this is going to be really, really troublesome for the Commanders if they can't run the ball. And a lot of teams have had trouble running the ball against this Dallas front. Dak is progressing well. He's not going to play this week, but how long they thought he was going to be out initially doesn't seem like he's going to be out that long. So there is a chance he even returns next week. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And Michael Gallup, like I mentioned, he returns to help out that offense a little bit. But again, I'm more so watching out for this Commanders front on the offensive side against this Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence defensive line for the Cowboys that's generating so much pressure. And Micah Parsons may not have the stats to back up, how good he is, but it's because he's getting double teamed and triple teamed. And that's why DeMarcus Lawrence had 3 sacks last game, right? So DeMarcus Lawrence is already a really good defensive end, but Micah Parsons is on another level. So if you're going to leave Lawrence one-on-one and triple team Micah Parsons, it's still going to be a field day for that defensive front. So I really, really need the Commanders to establish something with Antonio Gibson. I know that's really just a sad thing to ask for because it's Antonio Gibson, but if they can not necessarily just run with him, but if they can utilize him in that short screen game, where Dallas is bringing pressure and blitz, and the blitz gets too close, and then you're throwing dump offs to him, they can find space against that Cowboys defense. Their secondary is not as great as that interior. So if you can get past the defensive front, there are options there. Obviously, you have weapons. You have Curtis Samuel, you have Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dodson, you even have Logan Thomas. So there are weapons on the outside. Wentz just has to protect the football, and he's got to find those weapons. But that offensive line against that defensive line is going to be the biggest thing that I'm looking out for. And I think that defensive front's just going to be too much for the Commanders. So if I'm leaning away, I'm going Dallas -3 there.
Yeah, 100%. I think we'll see Wentz's true colors that, in this game, especially they have a kind of pretty cool plan, right? They'll give up plays, they'll give up yards, but then they'll go for the home run interceptions and things like
Yep.
that. So with Lawrence and God, what's his name?
Micah Parsons.
Michael Parsons, yeah, with those
Yeah.
guys on the defensive line, it's a well-oiled machine there on their defense.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we've got the Seahawks at Lions, and this game I think is a game that the Lions, in a typical no injuries, mano a mano fashion, would blow out the Seahawks, but they've got injuries that we need to consider. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to be there. DeAndre Swift will not be suiting up, and DJ Chark is questionable. Hopefully he can come in, because I think that he'll add the missing piece of Amon-Ra St. Brown not being there. But if not, Josh Reynolds will have to step up as well. And you already mentioned Hawkinson is out, so or is questionable. So that fears. That gives me a little bit fear on the Lions kind of taking this game and winning. But in terms of the Lions team, as far as offense goes, they're doing really well. Jared Goff is doing a good job not getting sacked, although his offensive line ranks kind of in the middle of the pack based on PFF's ranking. He does a good job of evading the pocket, allowing to utilize his running backs, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he's getting he's moving the ball forward, which is allowing the Lions to score well on offense. So they're gonna have to do a little bit more of that. They're gonna have to utilize Jamal Williams, who's playing instead of DeAndre Swift. And the Seahawks defense, right? So we saw them against the Broncos, and they seem pretty good. But outside of that, as far as efficiency rate for quarterbacks is concerned, they've been allowing at 100 or just below at 99, 100 QB rating to their to the opposing quarterbacks. So Jared Goff, as long as he doesn't take risks and is efficient, should be able to still utilize the weapons that he has outside of all the injuries. Also, another point to add on to the Lions, their rushing game has been really good, 5th in rushing run offense, while the Seahawks are 21st in run defense, right? So all good things for the Lions. The Seahawks, one good thing for them is actually Geno Smith, believe it or not. So Geno Smith, say what you want about him, but he has the highest completion percentage over expectation among all quarterbacks. So what's expected of him to complete, he is completing. So it's anyone's game on a Sunday. I still favor the Lions, but the Seahawks could keep it close just because of the injuries. At the end of the day, if I had to pick, I'm going to pick the Lions. They're favored by -4 points, and the over-under is at 48 points in this game.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, right? Their offensive line, numbers-wise, all across the board is not amazing. But Penei Sewell, man, their right tackle, he's got the 5th highest graded tackle blocking score out of PFF so far this season, and he's just 21 years old. So that's a really, really nice tackle to have at such a young age. They're probably going to lock him up for years, and he's going to be kind of one of the staples of that offensive line. So I think that's really kind of a bright spot. And you had mentioned Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds has some camaraderie with Jared Goff, right? I think from their time even with the Rams, I'm pretty sure they played together there, and now they're on the Lions. So if, again, Chark is also hurt and Hawkinson's limping, we already know the guys that are out, there is a world where Josh Reynolds, if you're desperate, you're slotting him in your flex, because the Lions have had the capability to throw the football. They love putting up points. They put up a ton of points so far early in the season. And so if we're looking to maintain that, then somebody's going to have to get some of those points and some of those catches. And Josh Reynolds seems like he could be that guy. I guess on the Seattle side, the one thing I kind of want to talk about is the receivers on their side, right? I mean, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, surprisingly, the drop in production that I expected because of Geno is not there. Now, the completion percentage over expected, that's really, really impressive. But is Geno Smith's expectations just really, really bad then? What's the baseline that they're expecting him to perform at, and why is he first? Nonetheless, I agree. Just even watching, he's been way more impressive than I expected him to be honest. So I think that's definitely encouraging signs for them. It has made Lockett somewhat fantasy relevant, and DK's kind of been boom or bust, but he's had his weeks as well. But you're right. Completely healthy, I'm taking Lions all day long, knowing that there's so many injuries. 4 points seems like a little bit bigger than kind of that 3-point spread. That leads me to believe that this could be a little bit of a closer game just because of the injuries. So +4 is kind of where I lean, but I still would expect the Lions at home to win this football game. That takes us to Indianapolis, where the Colts are coming off an impressive upset of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Titans come into town here. Indianapolis at home, favored 3.5 points, over under 43. Pretty easy matchup here to watch. It's going to be the battle of the running backs, right? You got Derrick Henry on one side, you got Jonathan Taylor on the other side. That's it. I mean, both of these teams are built on running the football, controlling the clock, converting on those third downs, making it third and manageable so you can even run the ball on third down, and then playing that complementary kind of play action type football where you have the Michael Pittmans, you have the Robert Woods, you have Treylon Burks, you have those guys on the other side. But again, they're run first offenses. So I'm expecting a lot of running. I'm expecting both of these running backs probably to see like 25 touches at least. So it should be a pretty nice fantasy output if you have Derrick Henry or if you have Jonathan Taylor. But I think the important thing for the Titans are, they need to win a football game. They need to win this game. They're on the road. The Colts bounced back and had a really impressive victory against the Chiefs, but I'm still not impressed with Matt Ryan, and I'm still not impressed with anybody that Ryan Tannehill right now is passing to. I think there was a quote that came out saying they want to get Treylon Burks more involved. It's been a year where the rookie receivers have really, really flourished, like a lot more so than, even what we expected, knowing that it was a good good crop of guys that we had coming in this year. But we want to see Treylon Burks kind of fit into that equation as well with the Wilsons and, the Olaves and all the other guys, the Londons. So we want to see Treylon Burks get involved there. But for me, I'm looking at which team gets to play football their way. Because, again, it could be a situation where both teams get to run the ball accordingly. And then we just have, really, really long drives on both sides of the football. So it just becomes who has the ball last or who has the ball, the most. But with that being said, both of these running backs, haven't really played according to being drafted number 1 overall. Derrick Henry probably most likely being drafted top 5 overall in most leagues. So I'm expecting a bounce back from both running backs. It should be a run heavy day. I don't personally have a lean, to be honest. The Colts, I know they upset the Chiefs last week, but we talk about the Titans. They're just a team that sticks around a lot. These are the games that they take care of business, kind of like they did last week. So I'm a little remiss to say the Colts should take care of business at home, but it's just going to be one of those where the running back that gets the run game established and looks the best early on is going to dictate the rest of this game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Next up, we've got the Chicago Bears at New York Giants. The Giants are favored by 3 points, and the over/under is at 39.5. So Vegas is looking for a low scoring affair, which makes sense given these two pretty poor offenses. So for the Bears, no Monty, he is not playing. So Khalil Herbert will get the start. He's been an efficient back. When he starts, he is the top. He averages 22.5 opportunities, and I'm speaking in terms of fantasy points. So 14 fantasy points per game for a backup. You got to be really happy.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
I know, right? And so he's a top 10 running back this week. You have to start him. And on the Giants side, I'm going to start with sort of the injuries. We know that Sterling Shepard, he had an ACL season-ending injury. So Galladay and Tony need to step up, right? You pay the guy like Galladay. I don't know where he is, what he's doing, but he's just got to get connected with Danny Dimes.
He seems so disinterested in football. Like it's like you just body language and everything. Like it's just not there. And yeah, I mean, it's so sad if it's the fact that he made his money, because he made way more money than I think anybody expected him to make. And now that he's secured the bag, he just kind of doesn't care. But it's just a really, really sad brand of football if that is the case, because, you can't have guys like Richie James outshining you when you're signing like $90 million contracts, man. It's just not, you just can't have that. And right. So you're absolutely right. I think Galladay needs to step up, and Tony, like the flashes we've seen from him, they're not consistent, but it's also like he's not on the field very often. So is he just struggling to learn the offense? Is he have a feud with the coach? Like what's going on? Why is arguably their best offensive weapon outside of Saquon Barkley not seeing the field?
Yeah, him and Galladay are like in the same boat where they just seem like they don't really care. But speaking of Saquon Barkley, he is the offense. The Giants' offense are 4th in terms of rushing stats is concerned, and where their passing offense is 30th, given Galladay and Tony and all these guys we mentioned. So they're gonna have to run the ball often. Both teams are gonna run the ball. I think it's very similar to that Colts and Colts and Titans game where, it's going to be a running affair, a quick game. It's going to end sooner than some of the other games probably. But the Giants, as far as stats, their rush defense is 25th. And their defense is just not as good as a whole. They're 31st in turnover percentage. They have 0 interceptions this whole season. One bright spot here is the red zone defense, which they're 7th in the red zone, and their third down defense is 4th. So that just means it's going to be a boring game if you don't like.
They're just going to drive the ball down to the red zone and then stop them. And they're going to kick a field goal. They're going to have some field goal misses. It's going to be really annoying.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know which way to lean here. Honestly, Giants or Bears, it's a toss up. I'm going to flip a coin, and if it's heads, I'm going to go Giants. If it's tails, I'm going to go Bears. So really, but yeah, high running, good for fantasy, bad for anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm slowly jumping off the Fields train. I know we talked about it last week, and we have to give him some grace period. He needs weapons. He needs a team around him, but these are the games, man, where you have to just win. Like, figure out a way. You're playing teams that aren't amazing offenses, that don't have an amazing defense, right? Like, you have to be the X factor. And so, yeah, the running backs are definitely going to be kind of what the focus of this game is going to be on. But when they start to put 8 in the box, knowing that you're going to run the football, like, Justin Fields has to make plays. And that's going to be the difference. If he can finally have a game that, like, we think he's capable of having, he should be the difference. But right now, Daniel Jones seems more athletic than him. Daniel Jones is running as a quarterback more than Fields is, and he's being more successful at doing that than Fields is. And so I don't think a lot of people were expecting that, but I've been impressed with the way Danny Dimes at least runs the football as a quarterback, and he takes a lot of chances. And so if I have to lean, Giants at home with the Bears offense looking as putrid as it has, and Saquon still stealing the show, I'm going to ride with Saquon and the Giants.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that both of these teams are 2-1, right? But we're talking about like they're 0-3.
No, I mean, dude, the visually, my eyes tell me that these teams should be 0-3. So the record does not match what the product on the field. Next up is a very, very intriguing matchup. The Jacksonville Jaguars are traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles at home look like the team to beat so far in the NFC, maybe the NFL as a whole. They're favored 6.5 points, over under sitting at 46. A lot to like here, man. I mean, Jalen Hurts has looked so good early in the season. He's done a really good job of utilizing all of his weapons. I think he's doing the right amount of deciding when to run and the right amount of just staying in the pocket and making those throws. Goddard's been impressive. A.J. Brown has had his week. Devontae Smith has had his week. And Miles Sanders has looked, a lot better than last year, where he was averaging like 4 carries a game before they became such a run-heavy offense. So I think they've really found their formula as a team. And Jalen Hurts has taken that next step, not to mention that defense has looked phenomenal, right? You have the cornerbacks, you have the pressure. It's just been a really, really complete football team. But let's not dismiss the Jaguars. The Jaguars are coming off of 2 of the best performances of Trevor Lawrence's young career. All of a sudden, it looks like he has weapons that want to play for him. And all of a sudden, Doug Peterson has this team on a revenge tour, right? The former coach of the Eagles now coming back to Philadelphia. He's won a Super Bowl there, and he's got his new, nice, young, shiny toy in Trevor Lawrence that he wants to probably be like, this is the guy. Oh, you think you have a quarterback in Jalen Hurts? This is the guy. So I'm really intrigued to see how he gets this team prepared to play in such a hostile environment like Philly. This is going to be the biggest test for Trevor Lawrence probably in his career that at least matters, because every game last year to me honestly just didn't matter whether, whoever they were playing. So knowing that they're actually on the up and up, these are important games to see if, even if they don't win the game, can they be competitive? Can they actually look like they belong? And I love Peterson as a coach. I think he's going to have them ready to play. I don't want to be the hot take guy, but I am, I am looking at a possible upset here in Philadelphia, man. If they don't win, 6.5 point spread, if I have to pick, I am going to ride with the Jaguars plus 6.5. Call me crazy.
No, you're not crazy. I think if the Jags want to be respectable in this league, then, they come out and win, and everyone will put them on the map. Also, what they could also do is run the Philly special. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, man. In Philadelphia with Peterson as their coach, Trevor Lawrence catching the touchdown pass to win the football game.
How great would that be?
Nothing would ever come more full circle than that, man. That'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got the New York Jets at Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh is surprisingly favored by -3 points. Over under is 49.5. And I'm just going to be honest with you, man. I really think Jets are a better team here. I think that Steelers are in a decline. Not that they've ever been up, but they're just it's just not looking good for the Steelers. TJ Watt obviously is not playing, and who is playing for the Jets is Zach Wilson, and it's all really gonna matter to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson it's his first game of the season, so he just has to make sure to not mess up, right? I think so. The Steelers, their offense isn't flowing. Their defense is not doing anything special to rave home about. Akila Witherspoon is also out. They're not the number one cornerback, but the second string cornerback is out. So I think that the Steelers have a very uphill battle. If they win, if they do end up winning, it's going to be because it was a hard-fought Tomlin type of game. They grinded it out, kicked some field goals. Trubisky comes out, throws to George Pickens, exploits that defense of the New York Jets that is a little bit of a concern, and ends the game that way. That's the only way they can win, keeping it competitive, and a miracle at the end. But I think that the Jets are a better team if Zach Wilson can come out and play well. That's really the X factor, just because we haven't seen him play, and he might be a little bit rusty on his first start. That's the only reason why the Jets don't end up winning this game. Other than that, I think it's the Jets game to win. And lastly, if the Steelers end up losing this game, then you should go to the bank, take your money out, and if you can run a parlay, I don't even think you can do this, but if you do a parlay on the next 4 Steelers game, pick the other team, because they've got the Eagles, they've got the Bucs, they've got the Bills. They're pretty much screwed.
Wow.
And then they go to bye week, so they could go to the bye week going 1-7, and that's it. That's the rest of the season for the Steelers.
I mean, at that point, Matt Canada's fired, right? I mean, Tomlin's not going to get fired. Let's be real, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I want to say Tomlin's not going to wait till 1-7 to make such a big change. Like whether it's Kenny Pickett coming in, whether it's, you know what, Canada sucks at play calling. Let's just get him out. He's so predictable. I don't know what the situation is, but man, Mike Tomlin has always been kind of a man of action. So I have to believe that he's not going to let them go 1-7. I mean, if they lose to the Jets here and drop to what, 1-3, 1-4, 1-3.
1-3.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some sort of a change. They're going to need to get the juices flowing. They're going to, because again, dude, like you said, there's trouble everywhere. When JJ Watt's playing, at least he can mask a lot of the defensive flaws. Sorry, TJ Watt. He can mask a lot of the defensive flaws because he can get to the quarterback. But when they can't generate any pass rush, then all of a sudden they're safeties, all of a sudden they're cornerbacks. Everybody is a problem on the field. And so I think we're going to have to rely, or you're going to, as a Steelers fan and as Steelers country, they're going to have to rely on the fact that Zach Wilson loves to turn the football over. It's his first game back. He, like you said, he could be rusty. So banking and being an opportunistic defense, like you said, ugly football game, probably a lot of field goals. But that's going to be the way. They're going to have to inch and squeak and claw away to win this game.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on the line here if they don't win this game, just because of I'm sure it's in the back of their mind, right? Like the matchup that's coming up. So I've got to expect that they will go all in on this game just because of the threat that's coming up, the storm.
The next game on the board should be a great matchup. Buffalo travels to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Baltimore at home, 3-point underdogs, over under sitting at 51. Man, I mean, there's no other thing to watch in this game besides the quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, through 3 games this year, has the most fantasy points of any quarterback through 3 games in any season in the history of football. That's it.
Wow.
Full stop. In the history of football, right? That is incredible. This dude is on a revenge tour. Everybody gave him shit last year, got hurt, didn't play the best, saw that cover 1 blitz package and didn't know how to kind of expose that or exploit that. And this year, he is a man on a mission, man. Rashad Bateman's been a nice surprise. He's finally stepped up. Mark Andrews is already Mark Andrews. J.K. Dobbins is slowly coming into his own in terms of getting healthy. I think the fear is still on the defensive side of the ball for the Ravens. The Bills offense is already the Bills offense. We know that they're insanely explosive. So there's nothing to lead me to believe that this shouldn't be a high scoring game. I just think Buffalo, as great as Josh Allen is, as great as the receivers are, they have to at least have a respectable run game. They can't make their offense so one-dimensional where Josh Allen's throwing the football 63 times like he did last week, that the defense just doesn't even have to worry about the run. It's so easy, so much easier to call defense when you know that more than like 75+% of the time, they're going to pass the football, right? It makes it that much easier to call defensive plays. So I think even if it's not sexy, even if it's not like the high flying, Allen wants to throw the ball 60 times, just run the ball almost the entire first quarter. See if you can establish the run, because at least the defense will start to come forward a little bit and respect that. If not, then what? Devin Singletary can have a 200-yard rushing game, because again, no teams are respecting their run game right now, that they have to throw the ball 61 times. And last week, it's not like they were ever down tremendous amounts to the Dolphins, right? They were winning that game for a large chunk of that game, yet Josh Allen still threw the football 63 times. So it's just not a recipe in the long run for success. Even if you have such a great quarterback, you have to at least be balanced, or at least keep the defenses honest to know that you can run the football. So I'm expecting the Buffalo Bills to at least do that, because the reasoning also is you want to keep a guy as explosive as Lamar Jackson off the field as much as possible, right? And as great as it is for Buffalo to, have a 80-yard bomb touchdown, that just means Lamar Jackson gets on the field that much quicker and he can run the ball 80 yards for a touchdown, right? So you're just right back to where you started. I think Buffalo is going to try to slow the game down a little bit, run the football, try to run it successfully, and then create some of those RPO read option, pass options where, the linebackers are coming up a little bit to respect the fact that they may run the football. And then that opens up things for Diggs and Davis and McKenzie and everybody else. So, I didn't think I'd be saying this, that Buffalo needs to slow things down a bit, but I think last week is a little bit of a wake-up call that we know, the league knows, the team knows, Buffalo knows how good their football team is. But in order to take that next step, in order to not fall into the trap that they fell into last year in that game against the Chiefs, where it became just Allen's going to throw a touchdown, Mahomes is going to throw a touchdown, Allen's going to throw a touchdown, Mahomes is going to touchdown. Whoever gets the ball last wins a football game. That's what happened, right? Buffalo needs to stop that from happening. And the best way to do that is to control the clock and keep Lamar Jackson off the field. So I think if they can do that, that's going to be the difference. I don't expect Buffalo to struggle scoring the football because the Ravens defense has not been great, but I do want to see them run the football, because I think the Ravens will turn around and score well too, because Buffalo still has a lot of injuries in their secondary. So look for a high scoring affair, but my one ask and what I'm hoping to see is Buffalo at least respect their ability to run the football a little bit more to keep the defense honest.
Yeah, don't all the lines seem really low this week? Like, and just in general, like the trend of the NFL, like a lot of scores the games that you think is going to be high, like a lot of points are not necessarily. So hopefully this game breaks that trend, because I would love to see a Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen back and forth action.
You're spot on. I had the tweet. I've been following the betting Twitter for a while now. I'm pretty sure unders are coming in at like a 65% clip through 3 weeks. So yeah, it's a really, really high number. So I know, again, that's why Vegas and that's why the books are making so much money, because most people love to bet overs. Mm-hmm. They love to take overs just to watch scoring happen. But at that rate, I mean, it does make sense to start riding the unders, but I don't know if the lines have shifted and adjusted according to 3 weeks of football. And that's why the lines seem a little bit lower. So we could see one of our first weeks where there's more overs coming in than unders, but you make a great point. It has been that way. And the proof is in the pudding. The stats do dictate that at least like 65% of unders have hit.
Interesting. All right. Next up, we've got the LA Chargers at Houston Texans. The Chargers are favored by -5 points and over-unders at 44. And it seems like every game that I've been talking about has been like teams where like injuries are like riddled on the team.
It's just like the NFL right now, dude. It's wild.
That's true. Week 4, and we're getting hit with the injury bugs. The Chargers are not short of that at all. So Keenan Allen is questionable. He was practicing, but then he got hurt in practice due to his hamstring injury. Jalen Guyton, we know he's out. And Herbert, he says he's good, but I mean, the guy's got to be.
He was good last week. He said he was good last week. He was hurt and he played, but he can't look that same way and play. It's just, it's one of those things where like Baker Mayfield last year tried to play through that shoulder injury and we saw how bad he was playing. Now, it's not to say Herbert's going to play that bad, but you're still a detriment to your team when you're limited. You have limitations, right? I mean, when we saw that he couldn't run 2 yards for the first down and just threw the ball all awkwardly a couple weeks ago, like that's as big of an indication as any that it's probably better to have a backup quarterback on the field that's at 100%. So I'm hoping, because this broken rib cartilage thing, I think just progresses with time. So I'm hoping every week that he plays, he gets better. So another week under the belt, hopefully he's looking a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had my ribs broken, but that just sounds really painful. So
I would be in bed. I would be in bed. I would not move. I would be like, I am in so much pain. These guys are
Yeah.
ballers.
And he's about to get hit by a truck, right? Like every Sunday. It's crazy.
Dude.
And so there's Herbert, there's Joey Bosa also injured. JC Jackson's questionable. Their starting offensive tackle, Rashawn Slater, also injured. So they're banged up, man. They're not looking good. So the Texans can really come in and take have this could be, I guess, maybe a trap game. I mean, Texans come in and definitely win outright, or that -5 line just seems a little too high for me. They did this last year too. The Texans played the Chargers and they had an upset. There was like the kickoff return and all these great plays. So Davis Mills balled out. So you could see you could kind of get that in this game as well. And Dameon Pierce is kind of on an uprise right now. He's not getting the third down reps or whenever they're behind those reps, but I think you mentioned this. He's a rookie with more opportunities they'll have more confidence in that and not go to old man Rex Burkhead and maybe rely on Dameon Pierce some more. So the Chargers really, in terms of how to win this game, they need to rely on Austin Eckler. Eckler needs to do better. And Texans give up a lot of yards against the runs. As a matter of fact, they've given up the most yards and an average of 5.6 yards per carry. So this is Eckler's game. He needs to be utilized and run all over the Texans and just go back home to LA happy, and then hopefully that their injury bugs get better throughout on the next coming weeks.
Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Panthers at home, favored by 1.5, over under 43.5. Man, this is just how far the mighty have fallen in terms of the Arizona Cardinals, man. I think what once was a team that we expected a lot of promise, a lot of potential last year before that, just having a quarterback like Kyler Murray, having a supposed offensive guru like Cliff Kingsbury, it just has not paid dividends to this team. And now they're underdogs to a really, really just ugly Carolina Panthers team. I know they're on the road, but still, Panthers being favored is just such a red flag to me. Panthers do have a pretty good defense, though. I think their defense hasn't gotten enough credit. They have been good. They just, the first couple of weeks needed to kind of get things going and flowing, but they have a good pass rush. They have good secondary. So there is a product on the field for Carolina to be good on defense. And the Cardinals, I think, are still dealing with those injuries, right? Rondale Moore is still on the injury report. James Conner is averaging 30 yards a game right now, rushing the football. So it's just been absolutely porous. Yeah, that's why guys like, Greg Dortch have had to step up. That's why, Zach Ertz is Zach Ertz is a great football player, but, they have all these tight ends, they have all these weapons, but there's just no game flow to their offense. It's a lot of off-scripted stuff. And it's kind of like a double-edged sword, Shovit, where like Kyler Murray is at his best being off-script, but the rest of the team kind of needs like a pattern or a flow to go off of, right? Like the receiver and the quarterback, the tight end and the quarterback need to have some chemistry to know like what they're going to do. So Kyler can be as off script as he wants, but if him and his receivers aren't on the same page, it's still not going to put a good product on the field. And I think that's kind of been their issue. I know they get Hopkins back in a couple of weeks, but I just want to see something from this offense that's sustainable. And if it's going to have to be a situation where Kyler needs to get more scripted, then maybe you have to go that way. Maybe that is what the recipe for success is. But right now, it's just not happening. And I'm just, I picked Kyler Murray before the season to be like a perennial MVP candidate. And so far, the team has just been so bad that obviously he's not in the running. And so my fear is that it's just not going to be that way. And I think Cliff Kingsbury probably is going to be on the hot seat if 2 or 3 more weeks of this kind of play transpires. But from the Carolina Panthers standpoint, CMC is hurt. He's back on the injury report. He was practicing, I think, in limited fashion today, but they have talked a little bit about Chuba Hubbard and Dante Foreman. So I don't know if he is out. I don't think you can deploy either one of those guys with full confidence because it's going to be kind of like a split carry type thing. And the other thing to remember, DJ Moore, a guy that gets drafted pretty high, like in a pretty good spot because he is a receiver 1. I think he has a total of like 80 yards receiving through 3 games. So it's been a piss poor offensive showing for the Panthers. Their defense has done them justice. It's been a piss poor offensive showing for the Cardinals. Their defense really hasn't done them justice. So I'm just fearful that this game is going to be incredibly ugly. I have expectations in my head that this is the type of game that the Cardinals should come in and win. But the Panthers defense may be the reason that they don't. So I don't really know what to make of this football game at all.
No, I'm sorry, Carolina Panthers fans that are listening to this, but I think you guys are about to get seriously humbled right this week. Being favored by 1.5 points against Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, like who have you beaten? Yeah, you beat the Browns. Yeah, you lost to the Browns. You beat the Giants. You beat the Panthers, and now you think you could be favored? And no, I think this is absolutely ridiculous. Cardinals are going to come in and win this game. I don't have any doubt about it. And if I'm wrong, you guys can come and, yell at me, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, losing to the Browns and the Giants, and their only win is against the Saints with Jameis Winston having like half of a back or a fourth of a back. I mean, that's not really an impressive victory. And even that game, you allowed 14 points. So, like you said, playing defense against a guy like Kyler Murray is a different level of defense you have to play. Their edge rushers, Brian Burns is phenomenal. JC Horn's been really, really good early in the season. So the defense is there, but you're right. It's such a disrespect to the Cardinals and what they should be versus what they are that this line is favoring Carolina. I mean, I'm absolutely baffled.
All right. Next up, we have the New England Patriots at Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is favored by 9.5 points, and the over-under is at 40.5 points. The biggest news here is that we're not clear about Mac Jones, whether he's going to start or not. Bill Belichick has been just, straight face, poker face as far as whether he's going to start. He's just playing his game. And I think it's kind of smart because once Brian Hoyer with their backup comes in, then that the Patriots are going to be a one-dimensional team. Brian Hoyer's completion percentage over expectation is 56/59. So that means that he is only better than 3 people, and that's Blaine Gabbert, Blake Bortles, and Mark Sanchez. And this is out of 1,500 touches. So he's only better than 3 other quarterbacks with 1,500.
That's a horrible list in a group of people to be associated with.
So, Bill Belichick is probably trying to make the Packers not just focus on their run defense because according to PFF, one of the Packers' Achilles heels is their run defense. They think the PFF ranks them as the second worst in the league. So I think that's going to be the only way that the Patriots come out on top is running the ball well with Stevenson and Damian Harris. But the Packers are a better team on offense. They got Romeo Doubs. I'm not sure if Lazard is playing or Christian Watson and any of the other guys, but Romeo Doubs, AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones, right? These guys are really they're good enough to go out there and score enough points for the Packers. I think Packers come out on top, but the only way, like I mentioned, the only way Patriots win is if they end up winning on the run game.
Yeah, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson show is what it's going to have to be, right?
Yeah.
Converting on third downs, controlling the clock, keeping Aaron Rodgers off the field. 9.5 seems like a big spread for against a team that does run the football a lot. So game script could dictate that being a lot closer affair. That takes us to Las Vegas, where the Raiders, who have looked disgusting, are hosting the Broncos, who will have looked equally disgusting. And this is another game, Shovit, where, my God, how much the mighty have fallen. The Broncos against the Raiders are 2.5-point underdogs, where the Broncos came into the season as perennial Super Bowl contenders. Now they're 2.5-point underdogs in Vegas against the Raiders, over under 45.5. Dude, I don't know. I don't know. I have Russell Wilson on my team. I keep telling myself, this is the week, man. It's the Raiders. They look so bad. Like, if there's a team that the Russell Wilson can cook against, it's the Raiders. But why is Vegas having the Raiders as a 2.5-point favorite against the Broncos when at least the Broncos have, a defense? They at least have something on their team that's, that you can latch onto, whereas the Raiders haven't had a good defense. Their offense has been so inconsistent. Derek Carr's been inconsistent. They can't run the football with Jacobs. Devontae Adams isn't seeing enough targets. Mac Hollins is seeing too many targets. Like, there's no identity on this team. They have no real flow to their offense or anything for that matter. But the problem is the Broncos are suffering the same feat on their offensive side. Russell Wilson can't get going. Devontae Williams looks really, really good, but they don't run the football enough. Their offensive line hasn't been great. And Jerry Jeudy has been kind of, hit or miss and not really present. Courtland Sutton has flashes here or there, but it's just not the offense that we expected this offense to be when they signed Russell Wilson all offseason. All the speculation of how good this team and this offense could be, they're just not quite there yet. And this line is a predicament of that. To be 2.5-point underdogs against a porous Raiders team that have just been so bad, that continue to be bad, that I think, until they move on from Derek Carr, they're just going to be stuck in this land of like mediocrity to slightly below average. It's just straight disrespect to the Broncos, man. And I think it's a wake-up call that if there's a week that they want to bounce back, it's against the Raiders. It's a divisional game. They have to win this game for the division's sake and for the sake of just building some momentum. So I honestly still, despite how ugly this team has looked, I'm going to take the Broncos on the road, 2.5-point underdogs against the Raiders, because I don't believe in the Raiders.
Yeah, they haven't given us anything to believe in them. The only thing is, like, maybe they'll play our trump card because Josh McDaniels went to the room with their owner, and now he's like, he's got to win.
He's a changed man. He's a changed man.
Yeah, it's got to be a changed team. Yeah. No.
Derek Carr's got to change.
Agreed. All right. Next up, Sunday Night Football. The Chiefs at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucs, Chiefs, Brady, Mahomes. Rematch of the Super Bowl 55. I am so excited for this game. Forget anything I've said about Tom Brady. Tom Brady, I'm going to start him. I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for Tom Brady to have a couple of touchdowns. No, not really. I'm thinking, it's going to be heavy running game. They're going to do what they normally do. They're not the team that throws the ball as often. So I think that they'll try to run the ball, and some play actions by Tom Brady may allow him to target guys like Mike Evans. Tom Brady's numbers for when he does play action, when he doesn't do play actions, are outstanding. It's like 24 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, whereas like the difference is a little bit it's a less percentage difference when it's not a play action. So that's really, the running game has to complement the passing game for Tom Brady. And the Bucs defense is the 4th best defense in terms of yards allowed this year. So I think that the Chiefs will have a tough time getting through to this through this defense. They may, it's the Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes. He'll find a way to get to the end zone. It's not going to be like a shutout by the Buccaneers or anything like that. And really, the line is even, right? It's not favored one way or the other. The over and under is 46, and which is a fair assessment of these two teams. The game is going to, like you mentioned, is going to be played in Tampa Bay, not the US Bank Stadium in Minnesota. There's some injuries to note that might be actually kind of important. Is Harrison Butker is questionable. So it's not going to be Amendola after missing a field goal and extra point. Yeah, so it's going to be Matthew Wright, who they picked up. What's it called?
Promoted from the practice
promoted.
Squad.
That's the word I'm looking for. Promoted from the practice squad, which could be, something to note. This could be a 3-point game, and missing a field goal, Bucs win with a field goal. That could definitely happen. But it should be exciting. Should be fun to watch. So, goat versus baby goat. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I rode goat last week against second goat, and now it's goat against baby goat, and it's just everything in my power. All my money tells me to take Mahomes, man. Until Brady has enough weapons around him to make this offense look like anything, they're so lackluster. Why would we not, as a pick'em, take Patrick Mahomes, man? So I'm definitely riding Chiefs in my mind right now. I think that's going to be a bet that I place on Sunday. As a pick'em, as a coin toss, the Chiefs just have a better offense right now. They're flowing more. They still have Kelsey, obviously, so there's at least somebody that there's connection with, versus the Buccaneers right now. Like, he's scrambling to get Russell Gage the ball, and Russell Gage is brand new to this team. So we need to see kind of how the injuries shake out for Brady. But as a pick'em game, give me baby goat, because goat is he's just getting old, man, and his offensive line is just not what it used to be. That kicks us into Monday night. The Rams are traveling to 49ersville to take on San Francisco in a big divisional matchup. 49ers at home, favored by 1.5, over under 42.5. The story of this show is obviously, again, divisional matchup. I'm expecting this game as well to be a pretty run-heavy game. I think the 49ers saw kind of last week the lingering effects of Jimmy Garoppolo and his injury still, and his I guess, I don't know if it's just he's not quite back to 100%. Knowing that they only have Jeff Wilson and no other running backs really there, when Jeff Wilson's on the field, I think teams are expecting them to run. So it's becoming a little bit predictable, kind of like I mentioned, like their play calling seemed more predictable than it normally does. I don't know if that's why it was. And when Deebo Samuel was in the backfield, they were giving him the ball. So it wasn't like they were disguising him being there. So I'm hoping Kyle Shanahan adjusts and their play calling can be a little bit more deceptive. But these two teams know each other really well. It's McVay, Shanahan, two guys that know each other really well. Divisional matchup. I think Cooper Kupp is going to get his. I'm expecting to see Cam Akers run the ball a lot, see if he can finally solidify himself as RB1 and take more carries away from Darrell Henderson. But on the 49ers side, we need Jeff Wilson to get going. I would like to see Deebo Samuel touch the football a little bit more. He's your best offensive weapon. And let's get guys like Ayuk and Kittle involved, man. 49ers have so many good weapons. Jimmy G, just start exploiting these weapons and start utilizing them a little bit more. The defense is there. The 49ers have a good defense. The Rams have, a somewhat respectable defense, although not as great as they were last year. But this is going to be a tight game, hence the line at 1.5. I'm expecting Cooper Kupp to have his. Matthew Stafford might be a good spot start there, even though the 49ers have a good defense. Cam Akers, you're probably still waiting a couple weeks before you really deploy him. But on the 49ers side, you got, Deebo Samuel you're starting. You're probably starting Jeff Wilson. You're probably teeter-tottering between Brandon Ayuk till you see a little bit more consistency. And as great as he is, you can't start Kittle yet until he starts to produce. And it's just a sad sight to see for sore eyes because Kittle is one of the best tight ends in the league. So expecting a ramp up in that offense from how vanilla they looked last week with Jimmy G's first start. I'm hoping that they've kind of ramped things up a little bit, but it should be a tight affair. It's going to be a great game for Monday Night Football and a divisional matchup in San Francisco. That's it for the rundown show, but let's end the episode with Moneymaker. Moneymaker's been a sad segment, sad for me. 2-3 year to date. I put out 6 plays last night for Thursday Night Football, all prop plays. Wouldn't you know it, 2 of the prop plays featured Tua Tagovailoa, who obviously we know the whole story there. So unfortunate to lose bets based on injury, but those are something you can't really cap for. I don't know. I don't really have specific plays yet that I love yet. So what I'm going to do is more than likely do some research over the weekend and on Sunday before game time. Keep your notifications on, follow Only Playbook at Twitter, and I will post my plays, my best bets for the weekend there on Sunday. And it's going to be a little bit earlier than expected, guys, because you have that London game. Make sure you set your alarms for 9 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Central time, 7 a.m. Mountain time, 6 a.m. Pacific time. So really early game to get us started. Hopefully I can put out my tweets before that game starts. Follow us on Twitter at Only Playbook to get all of the injury news, all of the betting news, everything that you need. If you're watching on YouTube, you can listen to us on any of the podcast platforms. Shobit, you have anything to add on this episode before we call it quits?
Good luck to all the fantasy owners out there.
Good luck to your fantasy teams. Good luck to your favorite teams. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.